In this video, we are going to go over relationship lists. So by relationship lists, when you're connecting within a record to multiple other records, and by records, rows, in a different table. And I'm going to go over why you would ever want to use this, how to use it, and most importantly, when not to use this, which is arguably even more important than everything I talk about in this video. I've seen so many people make kind of basic mistakes when designing their database with relationship lists. So let's jump in to our examples. Okay, let's dive into our example here. So if you're a bubble dev, maybe you're building a project for a school, it's an elementary school, and you want to keep track, you want an online portal, a simple online portal, no group chats or emails, that where parents can go in and see all their kids' extracurriculars so they know that their son or daughter has basketball or soccer on Wednesday and the location so they can keep track without having to email or anything like that. And teachers can go in and also see what extracurriculars they're assigned to for that school year or semester. So let's dive into how exactly we would design something like this. So the first thing we would do is get our user table, and that's the people signing into the portal, right? We're really looking at teachers and parents to go into the portal. And so for that, we need a name, an email, a phone number, and then we want to know if it's a teacher signing in. For the most part, it's going to be no. If it's no, that means it's a parent. But if it's a teacher, then it'll be yes. So very simple. Gone over this example 100 times. So let's go ahead and put that in Bubble to start with. So there's a quick refresher on our database example. And since I'm on video 5 of this course, I'm just going to create a table with the appended 5. So we know it's a separate database for this 5th video. And we're going to call this the user table. Bubble actually has a built-in user table. So if you go up here on the bottom, there is a user table. Okay, we could just use that user table, and yeah, we can use the user table. I think we can append. No, we can't change the name. So we'll create a new user table, but I would always use, obviously, the default Bubble user table. That's the only one you can really use for this use case. For the video, I'm going to create a separate table. Okay, so first of all, what we have here is we have a name, email, phone number, and teacher. So I'm just going to do this quickly. Name, text, awesome. Email, text. Email will be built in on the user table. Excuse me. And then phone number. And lastly, I think what we had was teacher, question mark, yes, no. And the default is going to be no. Most people who sign up are not going to be teachers. They're going to be parents. Awesome. All right, let's go back to our example. This was a quick refresher. So we have the users all set up. Now let's go and see what the next thing we want to save here. And that is going to be probably the extracurriculars. So let's start there. So the extracurriculars are going to be probably have a name. And there's many ways of doing this, but we said we really want them to know the time of the extracurricular. When a parent logs in, they want to see the time and they want to see the location of the extracurricular. And the last thing that the parents may want to see is who's in charge for this specific extracurricular. Is it Janice? Is it Jackson? And if we go back to the user table, we can see that these are the two teachers that have the teacher column marked as yes. So this is the first point where we're talking about a list of relationships, right? There may be two coaches on the basketball team. And so that's a list of users. We don't just want to put their names here. We're going to put what Bubble is going to save is their unique ID of these teachers. So again, in Bubble, there's a unique ID, and in every mainstream database, there's a unique ID to each record or each row. And we can save that here and basically say this is a teacher, and it links back to the user table to that specific row. But the only difference here is that here we're going to link to multiple users. So not just a specific user or specific teacher, we're going to have multiple teachers that we can link back to. And that's how you can save a list of references, a list of relationships to the user table. So that's like the most basic example. So let's go into Bubble and see how we can configure this table in Bubble and how we build it out there. Okay, so over here we have 5, we're on video 5, and our table is going to be called extracurriculars. Extracurricular, and then over here, let's start with the first fields we have. Okay, so we have the name, time, and location, and these are things we've been over before. The name is just a text field, right? We only want a text name. The time we can put as would we put it as a date, right? Let's pause here and think a second. Should we put this as a date? The answer is no in this case, because it's not a specific time. It's not like Tuesday, March 21st at 3 p.m. It's every week or twice a week or whatever the frequency of this extracurricular. Maybe you add like a field, like what's the frequency at a certain time. So instead, we could just put a number and say, okay, this is 3 or 4, or if we're doing like military time, you'd put like 14, etc. And then the last thing is location. So this can be an address, geographic address, right? Specific place where the parents know how to navigate to. And then the last thing, this is what this video is about, is that teachers in charge. So teachers, or call it staff, whatever you want to call it. And then over here, what we're referencing is actually a table. So you can search for it or you can scroll. And this is just all the tables that we had over here visible. And we created the user table, and we can reference the user table. This is for video 5. So 5th user table, the correct user table we created. And we just click here. This field is a list. So we're referencing a list of users. So it won't just accept one user. You can add in multiple users as a reference. Cool, amazing. So we have our extracurricular table. So that's example 1, right? Where we're referencing not just one user in the next table, we're referencing a list of users, which is the list of teachers in charge, because maybe 3 basketball coaches or 4 soccer coaches, or I don't know, a coach and 4 assistants. So let's jump into the next table and really complete this database, which is actually how I would design probably a database for this specific problem. Okay, so the next table we want to create is actually the kids table, right? Now, why wouldn't we just add in kids to the user table? You may ask, this is what I would be thinking. We would just have one table, we don't need a separate table. The kids won't be the ones logging in. This is really a tool for parents. If it was a tool for the kids to log in, that would be a different story. But for my use case, for the project I'm building, I just want this to be a tool for parents to log in, know where the extracurriculars are, know which teachers are involved so they can contact them, etc. So that's why the kids table is a different thing than the user table, because the kids don't need like their contact information. They don't need a phone number. And there's just different things we're saving on the kids table. And let's go over what we're saving here to really reiterate that we have here the name, right? We want to know who the kid is. And then we want to know the list of parents, right? So this is another multiple relationship. And some families have more, most families have more than one parent. And therefore, we're going to reference, okay, we want to know who this kid's parents are, right? Because it's also a tool for teachers to see what kids are enrolled in the extracurriculars they're in charge of and who their parents are, right? If they need to contact a parent, if a kid gets injured, they need help with something, we need to be able to reference on that kid and know which one of who their parents are. So we can save here a list of users, and those users are going to be those parents, right? Jake's parents may be Philip and Jerome, and therefore you can reference the unique ID. And again, in Bubble, what it's doing is it's going to take and say, hey, we're going to save on this record, on the kid's record, the unique ID of both Philip and Jerome. So that 2 and 3 that we have over here, we're going to save that on the kids on this record, on this row. And that way we can always know to reference back and get all the information about Philip and Jerome as needed, right? So that's the first list. And there's multiple lists here, which is why I use this example. So the next thing we want to know, okay, what grade is the kid in, right? And that's also important, of course. And then the list of extracurriculars. A kid may be doing multiple extracurriculars, right? And a parent may want to go in and see, hey, how many extracurriculars is my kid doing? And what are those extracurriculars? I want to learn more about them. I want to know where they are, what location and the time, right? If you're a busy parent, you want to go in and just see, okay, here's the list of times and the extracurriculars each one of my kids is doing. And so we have here a reference to the extracurricular table. So we're really using two tables here. And lastly, this is a very realistic example, right? If there's a pizza party or any type of party, everyone these days has allergies. So what we can do is create another table, which is just a very simple table, and maybe teachers can only enter in all the allergies that a kid can have. People have nut allergies, strawberry allergies, whatever, can go into its own table. And then we can reference for each kid the list of allergies they have. So when a teacher is trying to plan an event for these kids for their, I don't know, they won the soccer championship and they want to go out or order pizza or whatever, they know to accommodate whoever's vegetarian, they know to accommodate people that are gluten-free and possibly people that are kosher, and just give all the needs to the specific user, the specific kid, right? And make sure to accommodate them all. And all of this can happen in this one platform. So hopefully this makes sense. If not, I'm just going to reiterate this point one more time. Again, we're calling, and when I say a list of users, it would be the unique IDs of the 2 users or 3 users that are the parents of this kid. And then when I say list of extracurriculars, it's the list of extracurriculars. It's a unique ID that Bubble's going to be saving of, like soccer, basketball, so it's going to be saving the unique ID of these 2. So it has a reference from the kids table to multiple extracurriculars that this kid is taking. And lastly, with the allergies, Blake may have a nut allergy, a sugar allergy, and so we can save that list of references, like 2 and 3, to the, if they have a nut allergy and they're gluten-free, we can say a peanut allergy and they're gluten-free. We can save like the link to 2 of these allergy rows or records, that's what we call them in Bubble, on this kid's allergies column. Okay, cool. So this is like a lot of list of relationships. And so that's why this is a really good example. And let's go and implement this in Bubble. So actually, before I do that, why don't you pause this video and actually try to create this table. This is one table in Bubble for your reference, and see if you can do it. And then I'll go back and we'll do it together. Okay, hopefully you got a chance to try that out. Let's go back and do it together. So first, what we're going to do is create this allergies table, right? We can't reference a non-existing table in Bubble. Let's go back to Bubble and here 5, because we're on the 5th video. And we're going to call this allergy. Okay, cool. And over here, what we have is just a name, which is text, right? We want to put in nut allergy or whatever we want to put in, and we just could create. Okay, now let's go to this last table we want to create, which is going to be 5, and that is going to be our kids table. We can just put in singular kid, right? Because each record is one kid. And let's get started with the fields. Okay, so let's start with the name, right? Pretty simple. It has a name, and we probably want their full name there, not just their first name. And then we can call and reference parents. So over here, again, so the type is actually, it's not text, it's not a number, it's a reference to a different table. It's right, it's this other table we created, the user table, right? We're referencing from here to this specific different table because we really want to save who the parents of this kid is. So let's call this parents, and let's reference the user table, but it's 5 user table because that's the table of this video and part of the app we created. And then over here, we're not just referencing, like each kid doesn't have one parent. They have a list of parents, right? 2 parents, 3 parents. Any more than one is a list. So over here, we can check this box, and that way we can save multiple parents to a specific kid. Awesome. All right. So let's go again. Grade, right? This is just a number, pretty simple. Grade, number, and then current extracurriculars, right? We can add that in, current extracurriculars. And what we're referencing here is the extracurricular table. And again, each kid has multiple extracurriculars, so it's not just one extracurricular, because we want to see all the extracurriculars, like you may be enrolled in soccer, football, basketball. And so we want a list, we're referencing a list of those extracurriculars. And then lastly, what we have here is allergies, right? I may be allergic. Me specifically, I'm allergic to penicillin. And for a while, I was lactose intolerant. So that's 2 allergies. So we want to add in allergies. And we're going to reference the allergy table. Over here, we have a list of allergies, right? You can have more than one allergy. So we want to make sure we can accommodate that. And some kids may only have one allergy, but here we're just saying, okay, we know that there could be a kid could have a list of allergies. So then we can create that. And there you go. That's our table. So first, let's go ahead and create an example of a kid on this platform. So let's add some data to each one of these tables and then create an example within Bubble. So in order to do that, we click on app data, and that takes us to a view, a more Excel view, right? A table view of our tables. That's like a lot more similar to Google Sheets or Excel. And over here, what we can see is first we need a set of users. So let's create 1 or 2 users. Maybe let's create 2 users. Test. And are they a teacher? No. And the name is test on teacher. Phone number is whatever. And okay, now we got 1 user. Let's create another. All right, test1 at test.com. And the name is going to be test on teacher 2. This and not teacher. And then let's create 2 teachers, right? Teacher 1 at test. Name teacher 1. And the phone number is going to be this. And the teacher is going to be yes. And then we can go one last one. Okay. Teacher 2 at test.com. And the name is going to be teacher 2. And the phone number is going to be this. And the teacher is going to be yes. Okay, now we got 4 users, 2 teachers and 2 non-teachers. So 2 parents and 2 teachers. Amazing. Now let's create extracurriculars. So let's start with our first extracurricular. And that's going to be, the name is going to be soccer. And the teachers are going to be, in order for me to actually reference the teachers here, what I need to do is go and click on primary fields. So primary field basically says, like, how can I, in the backend, which is like the table, how can I, when I'm searching to add a teacher to an extracurricular, what field should it be searching for, right? By default, it's searching for that unique ID, but I don't remember off by heart what the ID, or right, the unique ID is like the number that corresponds to the row or the record. I don't remember that off by heart for the users I just created, and I don't know them. I can display them by saying, okay, unique ID, but I don't remember this number. That's a pretty long number. So what I can do is say, okay, when I'm referencing this table in another table, like in the extracurriculars table, when I'm referencing users, I click primary fields and I go down to 5 and I say for user, I just want to reference the name. For allergy, I also want to reference the name. For a kid, I also want to reference the name. So when I'm searching, it's just easier to add. And for the extracurricular, I also want to reference the name. Okay. So when we go back to that extracurricular, now when we add a curricular, we can say, okay, soccer. And what we're referencing here is teacher, right? We want to add, now we can easily search and say, okay, we're adding to this extracurricular soccer. Teacher one is in charge of this extracurricular. Not only is teacher one, also teacher two is in charge. So we're referencing there two records from, or two rows from the user table, right? We're taking the extracurricular and we're saying, okay, two of our users are responsible for this record. And then we can create and we can fill out the time and location separately. And let's add football. And then we can fill out the location and time, but I'll leave that empty. And here also, those two teachers. And obviously, if we had more teachers, we would add them here as well. Teacher two. Amazing. Okay, so now we have our extracurriculars, we have our users. Now let's add in our allergies, right? So allergies aren't referencing anything, it's just a name. Let's say nut allergy. And then we have, right, when we go back to our allergies, it's just the name. And let's say lactose intolerant. And there you go. When we go to kids, finally, this is where it all comes together, where we're referencing multiple fields. So in this table, we can add in allergies, right? We can say allergy, and let's say the kid's name is Jake, and their extracurricular is soccer. All right, let's try this again. So to bring it all together, we're going to create a kid and let's call it Jake. And the allergy is going to be to lactose. Yes, that's one. And maybe peanut. Is that what we had? And then extracurricular will be football. And I think we had soccer. And then grade one. And parents can be teacher one. Go back and find out what our non-teacher. Okay, so let's change this, click edit, and we can add in non-teacher and non-teacher two, which are the parents. And we can see that we have now a kid with all the relevant relationship lists we have for them. And we can see we have them in the database. And now when we go on the online portal, we'll be able to see everything about this kid directly from their record, from their row, just like we have it in Google Sheets. Okay, cool. So now that is relationship lists, and I'm going to add a few caveats to when and to use and slash not use lists, because they're like everything in Bubble. It's a very flexible tool. There's 100 ways of doing things, but here are some just simple best practices about lists. With lists of relationship or lists in general, you want to make sure that the list, for example, list of users, which is a list of parents or contacts, will never be over 10. Or maybe in rare cases will be over 10, but definitely will never be over 100. And 100 should never ever be over like 1,000. That's like a problem. And the reason is because when you load this on the page, it's loading also all the users and all the extracurriculars and all the allergies. So think about it like when a user goes onto a website, the website just loads a bunch of data on the computer, and that stresses the computer out. Basically, the more data that is on the computer at that time displayed will slow down the page load speed. So you want to load as little as possible on the page. And one way of doing that is making sure that you're only loading what you actually need. And so let's say we had, for example, under each user, under each parent, under each teacher, maybe a good example, we had a list of all their students. That could be a list of 100 students, which would be really heavy because every time you'd open a profile or log in as a teacher, you would then have to load all 100 students. So every time you go on a page, you're loading a lot of data. So you want to load as little as possible. And that's why we keep lists to things that are under 10. So for example, a kid will not have more than, I don't know, they may have 3 parents, 3 family members, or 5 maximum. Usually it's 2 or under. Just even on the portal, and maybe it's even just like one of the parents who wants to be on the portal and the other one is not. So it'll be a list that's very small. Another thing is like a kid can't take more than 5 extracurriculars, right? They're a really good kid, maybe they can take 10. If they're like a crazy overachiever, maybe they'll take 15 extracurriculars. So you can see that it's not like reaching a huge amount of extracurriculars. And then the last thing is list of allergies, unless there's rare cases where you'll have more than 10 allergies, but usually it'll be 1 or 2. And it's okay if there's one kid who has more than 10, but the goal is like if you think that it's likely for most of the records to have a list of more than 10 in the relationship column, if it's likely for the relationship column to have more than 10, like the average column, the average row in the column. So let's say it's a list of, for example, what I would never do is for a teacher list of students, the average teacher will have probably more than 30 or so students, maybe even 100 total among all their extracurricular activities, etc. They may even have in the hundreds. And so that's like for the average teacher. So you never want to have a column where the relationship is above 10 for the average row. And on the flip side, there's another thing where you shouldn't use list of relationships or lists in general, where you need to keep more info about that relationship, right? So for example, if I wanted to keep, let's say for allergies, I wanted to keep information about how strong the allergy is. So for example, I don't know, for a peanut allergy, is it like deathly, or is it just like a minor inconvenience, or is it just a preference? Then I wouldn't be able to capture that in this list, in this column. Why? Because I'm just literally saving a list of allergies. I'm not saving anything about, for example, if I have 2 allergies saved in this column, like gluten-free and peanut allergy, I don't know anything about like the relationship between like how bad the gluten allergy is or how bad the peanut allergy is. And so in situations like that, where you need to keep any more info than just, okay, it's related. So for example, primary contacts, maybe you want to save, is it their cousin, is it their aunt, is it maybe their grandparent, I don't know like what the type of relationship is. That's like an extra level of data. Then you're going to need to create a new table, which would be like kid parent, kid contact table or something like that, and then the relationship column. So you'll need another table. If that doesn't make sense, it's okay. The only thing you need to understand is that when you're saving a list and you need like more info than just, okay, it's the primary contacts to understand that relationship for your app, or you need more information. I want to know not only their list of extracurriculars, but I also want to know all their historic extracurriculars and like what they thought of it. For example, that would be like a rating of the extracurricular or how much of a good fit it was. Maybe if you're trying to match in the future, then that's more info than just, okay, it's here are the extracurriculars they're currently in. It doesn't tell you anything about what they used to be in, what they thought of it, whether it's a good fit, how they're doing in the extracurricular. So in that case, you need like another table to actually capture that information. So this is for very simple relationships. I would say with primary contacts for this example, like it doesn't really matter. You don't need to know if they're the grandparent. Like I feel like this is like the best example. But I really try as much as possible, unless it's extremely simple relationship with like less than 10 in the list, I really try to avoid list of relationships. It's just like I rarely use it, but it's good to know, to have and use responsibly. I've seen literally so many people make a huge mistake of having huge lists that are slowing down their app dramatically, or then realizing they need to save a little bit more about the relationship rather than just the list of users, for example, in this column. And then they get stuck, and then you have to build data pipelines, and it's just like very problematic. So really use with caution. I would just avoid if you can, unless you absolutely, it's under 10. It's a very clear cut relationship. You don't need any more info about the relationship. Then I would use a list relationship column. So again, I rarely use it, use with caution, but yeah, this is relationship lists. Hopefully you have a good understanding here, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you again for watching.